I can't stay silent on Russ anymore. This needs to get out.
You heard that right. Stephen A is calling out the NBA's wildest free agent mystery, Russell Westbrook. How is a former MVP and triple-double legend still unsigned? Today, I am exposing everything. How Russ went from absolute MVP chaos to suddenly being too much for the league, and all the behind-the-scenes moves that are keeping him off a team. And honestly, this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's bigger, messier, and way more ridiculous than anyone's talking about. Wait till you hear how LeBron's behind all of this. Stephen A wasn't lying. Because honestly, how is Russell Westbrook still unsigned? It makes no sense. The guy literally opted out of a $4 million deal with Denver, thinking he'd find a team that actually wanted to use him, and now, it's October, and the man doesn't even have a locker. He was supposed to be that veteran spark for a contender. That guy every team says they need for his leadership, energy, and experience, but when the Nuggets reportedly told him he'd barely play next season, he said nah. He'd rather bet on himself than sit quietly at the end of the bench.
I thought he had something guaranteed or something already in the books, like somebody's interested. For you to opt out, from what I heard, is that they were not planning on to play him at all this year, even behind certain guys that he should be above.
And you know what? That's peak Russ. Prideful, competitive, and maybe a little stubborn. But that's the same mentality that made him who he is. Still, here's the weird part. No one else called. It's like the league suddenly decided he's too much trouble to touch. And I don't buy that it's all about basketball. You're telling me there's no team in the NBA that could use Westbrook's intensity for 15 minutes a night? Not one? So the question becomes bigger than he can't shoot, or he doesn't fit modern spacing. Something else is happening here. Something behind the scenes that's turning one of the most relentless players of this generation into a free agent nobody wants to claim. And to really understand how crazy that is, you've got to remember who Russell Westbrook used to be, because this fall only feels shocking when you know how high he once climbed. You can say whatever you want about Russell Westbrook today, but at his peak there was nobody like him. Nobody. Back in OKC, Russ was basically a beast wearing sneakers. Every night felt like he was out to prove that physics didn't apply to him. Of course, players like Kevin Durant and James Harden would do their thing. But Russ, he'd attack the game. Full speed, no breaks, and no apologies. That 2016-17 MVP season is still one of the wildest things I've ever seen. The man averaged a triple-double, not for a week, not for a month, but for an entire season. Something no one had done since Oscar Robertson in the 1960s. He dropped 42 triple-doubles that year, breaking a record that was supposed to be untouchable. Every night was chaos in the best way possible. You'd check the box score and just laugh like, bro, how? And it wasn't just stats. Russ made basketball feel different. The dunks, the celebrations, the attitude, all of it felt personal. That why not? Energy turned him into more than an athlete. He became a statement. He was the guy showing up to arenas dressed like he was walking a Paris runway, then dropping 40 with pure rage an hour later. He brought fashion into the mainstream of NBA culture before tunnel fits became an Instagram thing. You could argue that after Kobe retired, Russ carried that dog energy better than anyone. Fans loved him for it, and even people who hated him still tuned in. He was unpredictable, sometimes messy, sometimes unstoppable, but always real. And that's what makes everything now so hard to process. Because we're not talking about some role player who had one hot season. We're talking about a former MVP, a 9-time All-Star, a 2-time scoring champ, a man who once carried OKC on his back when everyone else left. So when you see him sitting unsigned, it doesn't feel like a natural decline. It feels like the league forgot who they're talking about. And that's where things start to twist, because after OKC, the story stopped being about dominance and started becoming about perception. After OKC, things started moving fast, and not in a good way. Russ was still Russ, but the NBA around him was changing. Teams wanted efficiency, and front offices were obsessed with spacing, shooting, and numbers on spreadsheets. And suddenly, the same guy who used to dominate with pure chaos started being labeled as hard to fit in. When he joined the Rockets, it felt like a reunion that could shake the league. Him and Harden again? On paper, that looked unstoppable. But Houston was deep in the Morey ball era. Threes and layups, nothing in between. But Russ wasn't built for that system. He thrived on rhythm, not analytics. Still, he had stretches where he looked crisp, like that run in early 2020 before the pandemic, where he averaged nearly 30 a game. But when the playoffs came, spacing issues and a COVID setback killed that rhythm, and suddenly the whispers started. Can you win with Russ? Then there was Washington. That team wasn't built to win titles, but Russ turned it into a show anyway. He tied Oscar Robertson's all-time triple-double record there and literally dragged the Wizards into the play-in. That's the thing about him. Even when the narrative turned sour, the dude kept producing. But people weren't talking about that anymore. They were talking about bad contracts, fit concerns, and declining efficiency.
The things that you built your career off of and people fell in love with you about is the same thing it's your downfall right now.
And then he went to the Lakers. That should have been the redemption arc. LeBron, AD, and Russ on one team sounded like a cheat code, but from day one it felt off. The fit didn't make sense, and the spotlight in Los Angeles is merciless. Every miss turned into a meme, every turnover became a segment on TV. People stopped watching him play and started watching him fail. That's where the narrative fully shifted, from unstoppable energy to problem. Even when he tried to own it, saying he'd do whatever the team needed, the story was already written. When he got traded to the Clippers, it looked like he finally found peace. The fit worked better. He played unselfishly, defended hard, and looked genuinely happy again. But by then, the public had made up its mind. He wasn't Russell Westbrook MVP anymore. He was Russell Westbrook role player. That's how fast the league moves. Analytics started rewarding quiet efficiency, not wild energy. And guys like Russ, who played with pure heart, became the odd ones out. Teams stopped seeing the fire as leadership and started seeing it as a risk.
That, hey, man, Russ got to be careful now. The rumor is around the league word around the league is that if he don't be careful, temper it down, he might find himself out the league. Okay?
But here's the crazy part. The one moment that looked like a fresh start. The one shot he had left to rewrite everything. It didn't just fade away, it flipped on him, and that's where Denver comes in. When the rumors first hit that Denver might want Westbrook, it felt like the perfect comeback arc. You've got the defending champs, one of the most unselfish teams in the league, and a guy who's been dying to prove he can still contribute to winning. People thought, all right, maybe this is where Russ finally finds peace. No drama, no finger-pointing, and no bad fit headlines. Just basketball. But that hope didn't last long. Reports started leaking that Denver only saw him as a deep bench piece, like barely touch the floor type of role. No closing minutes, no big responsibility. Basically, he was supposed to mentor the young guys and stay ready. Which sounds nice until you remember who we're talking about. This is Russell Westbrook, the guy who played through torn ligaments just because his team needed energy. So when he reportedly opted out, people were shocked. But honestly, it made sense. It wasn't about money or ego, it was about pride. About not sitting in a cage while others decide when you can roar. Russ has never been the vibes and clipboard veteran. He's wired to play, to fight, to matter. And that's what makes this whole thing tough to watch. You've got a dude who still shows up to workouts at 6 a.m., who's never cheated the game, who's still in shape and ready to go, but the league looks at him like he's radioactive. It's a weird paradox. Teams say they want dogs, but when a real one walks in, suddenly everyone's clutching their analytics spreadsheets. It's almost like effort stopped being valuable once numbers started running the league. But here's the thing. No stat can measure what Westbrook brings when he's unleashed. And maybe, just maybe, that's why this whole situation feels so wrong. So, why is nobody signing Russell Westbrook? It's not like he suddenly forgot how to hoop. He's healthy, still in shape, still one of the hardest working dudes in the gym. But when front offices start running the numbers, things get complicated fast. The first thing they'll say is fit. That word has become the modern NBA's way of saying, we like you, but we don't know where to put you. Teams want shooters who can space the floor, guys who can play off the ball, and guards who don't need it every possession. But Russ, he's the exact opposite prototype. He dominates the rock, lives in the paint, and has never pretended to be Steph Curry. It's not that he can't adapt, it's that most teams don't want to build their system around him anymore. They'd rather slot in a role player who just shoots corner threes and doesn't need touches. Then you get into the money side. Even if Russ is willing to take a smaller deal, front offices start sweating about cap space, rotations, and locker room dynamics. Not because he's difficult. The Clippers' locker room literally called him the best teammate they'd had, but because perception rules everything. The second something goes wrong, every headline blames him.
Like a period of time where he got to get his rhythm with new guys. Like, He don't got the ball 80% of the time no more. Everything changed, and everybody was just like, it's Russ' fault. He getting $40 million. Like,
That's what some people around the league call the narrative tax.
Narratives start to kick in, right? Conversations around the league. It's a copycat league. So if I hit you, Monica, say, yo, Monica, man, I don't, Russ lost his step going left.
Thing is, you're not just signing a player, you're signing the conversation that comes with him. The camera pans to him every time he doesn't play, every missed shot turns into a trending topic, and every anonymous exec gets their 2 cents on ESPN. Even Channing Frye said this.
It also, does that send a message to other GMs of like, hey, he had a really good situation, this is what we need him for, and he opted out?
Front offices today are obsessed with control. They want predictable rotations, data-backed matchups, and clean storylines, and Westbrook doesn't fit into that spreadsheet. He's emotional, unpredictable, and unfiltered, which is exactly why fans love him and execs panic. So, yeah, the market says he's too much. But what's really too much, his energy or the NBA's obsession with being safe? You know what's funny about this? The people who actually share a locker room with Westbrook don't sound anything like the analysts or execs. They sound like they're talking about a guy they'd go to war with. Paul George has said it more than once. Russ had chemistry with everybody. PG literally called him one of the best teammates he's ever had. Austin Reeves said the same thing after their time together in Los Angeles. Yeah, see for yourself.
Yeah, he's one of the best teammates I've ever had.
You can't fake that kind of respect. These are guys who've seen him every day, not highlight watchers or box score critics. Kevin Durant, the same dude everyone thought hated him, went on record calling Russ a legend.
Yeah, Russ is a legend, and I think he deserves to be in the NBA right now, and I think he deserves to walk out of the NBA on his terms. So, yeah, that'll be dope.
Heard that? KD said he absolutely deserves to be in the league right now. Think about how rare that is. Those two went through one of the most dramatic teammate breakups in NBA history, and even he won't disrespect Russ's legacy. Then you've got Shaq, who's not exactly known for sugarcoating anything. On his podcast, he said flat out,
I'm a fan of Russ, and
Okay.
he's taking a lot of heat right now.
He praised how hard he plays, how much passion he brings, and how even if the numbers dip, that intensity never leaves. When someone like Shaq, who's seen every kind of star ego there is, calls you a favorite, that says a lot. What makes all this more telling is who hasn't spoken. LeBron and Curry, it's been silence from them. And it's not disrespectful silence, just strategic silence. In today's NBA, where player power runs everything, a few words from the right person can change a career. Yet somehow, Russ's name hangs in the air like a secret everyone's too cautious to touch. The people who played with him love him. The people who control the narrative keep their distance. Here's where it really hits you. Because underneath all the noise, this isn't just about basketball anymore. Russ has always been wired different. You can see it in the way he plays, the way he talks, the way he carries himself. Every drive to the rim, every scream after a dunk, that's someone who's been fighting his whole life just to prove he belongs. He lost his best friend in high school, promised he'd make it for both of them, and then turned "why not" into a lifestyle. That's not marketing, that's survival. But when you've spent 15 years being the alpha everywhere you go, it's hard to accept being told, sit on the bench, play 10 minutes, and smile for the cameras. The crazy thing is, the same energy that made him a superstar is now the reason teams are scared off. The media sees fire and calls it arrogance. Like, bro, have we forgotten this is the same guy who averaged a triple-double for 3 straight seasons? And you can tell it gets to him sometimes. You see it in his interviews. He keeps it respectful, but you can feel that pride under the surface. That quiet frustration of a man who knows what he's worth. But the league doesn't see it anymore. Which begs the question, would any other Hall of Fame level player get treated like this? Russ's story might stand out, but he's not alone. Across the NBA, other veterans are sitting in that same quiet space, so you look around the free agent market right now and the names tell their own story. Guys like Al Horford haven't touched the floor in months. These guys are all respected vets, all solid players, but let's be real. None of them are former MVPs. None of them averaged a triple-double over multiple seasons. None of them changed the way the game was played. And yet somehow, teams keep giving them short-term deals, training camp invites, veteran presence roles. Meanwhile, Russell Westbrook, a guy who outworked half the league just to stay in shape, can't even get a minimum offer. You start to wonder how that makes sense. Because if it was really about performance or leadership or energy, Russ would have been signed the minute free agency opened. There's something deeper going on here, something that isn't just about X's and O's or shooting percentages. You can feel it in the way people talk about him, in how executives dodge his name in interviews. And maybe that's the real story here. Maybe this whole thing stopped being about basketball a long time ago. Oh, and that leads us to this.
Bronny got a contract, and Russell Westbrook gets thrown out the door. That's the reality.
Wait, hold up. The same Stephen A., who spent years roasting Russ every week, now defending him? Yeah, it's wild. And if even Stephen A. is flipping, you know something's off. And what he said hit harder than people realize. On one end, you've got Bronny James, who averaged 4 points in college, is obviously not that good of a player, and got drafted mainly because his last name is James. On the other, you've got a former MVP, a guy who gave everything to the league sitting at home unsigned. And then there's the moment everyone remembers. And that move? It explains so much. LeBron had no problem stepping up to defend his son, even when Stephen A. was just saying what everyone was already thinking. Bronny cannot play, but hey, that's the power of being a James. When your dad's LeBron, the rules bend. Meanwhile, think about Russ, the guy who once stood shoulder to shoulder with LeBron. Can't even get a courtesy call from the league's biggest star. That's the power play nobody's talking about. The NBA isn't just about points, rebounds, or highlight dunks anymore. It's a political game, and the players with the biggest influence can literally shape careers. LeBron James is the ultimate example of that. Through his agency connections, particularly Clutch Sports, and his personal clout, he can open doors for his son, create opportunities for his friends, push certain narratives, and quietly decide who gets opportunities and who doesn't. Now consider Russell Westbrook. For years, he was inside that circle. He played alongside LeBron, he was a household name, and he was celebrated as one of the fiercest competitors in the league. But fast forward to today, and Russ is on the outside looking in. He's ready to play, he's still grinding, but the influence that once helped him navigate the NBA isn't backing him anymore. People keep saying, Russ isn't a fit, or his game has declined. But let's be real, we've seen veteran revivals happen before. I mean, Derrick Rose went from MVP to barely playing to suddenly being a key piece again on contending teams. Dwight Howard had his ups and downs, got criticized endlessly, and then found ways to contribute meaningfully even in his later years. Carmelo Anthony, arguably one of the most polarizing stars of the last decade, took a break, came back, and reminded everyone that he could still put up points at a high level. So here's the question that's been on everyone's mind. If guys like Derrick Rose, Dwight, and Melo can get second chances, why can't Russ? Is it really just about fit? Or is it about perception, ego, and the fact that he's no longer inside the inner circle of power in the NBA? Russ isn't a broken player. He's still explosive, still relentless, and still one of the most competitive guys you'll ever meet. The difference is that now, teams are hesitant. They're worried about narrative risk, locker room dynamics, and media noise. But we've seen plenty of veterans come in with questions hanging over their heads and prove doubters wrong. So why are they singling Russ out? And that brings me to this question. If the NBA isn't opening the doors for him, what alternatives are even on the table? Well, believe it or not, the world is still full of options. The Chinese league has interest in him, and there are always overseas markets where legends can keep playing and cash in. Even the G League is a wild card. Yeah. It's a smaller stage, sure, but it's still a chance to remind everyone that Russ still has that fire. But here's the kicker. Russ isn't just any player. He's a former MVP, the triple-double king, a guy whose whole identity screams top-level NBA competition. Taking a step down, even temporarily, feels like admitting the league passed him by. And let's be honest, it would sting. History shows he's not the first star to face this crossroads. Melo, Derrick Rose, Dwight Howard, all of them had to navigate moments where leaving the NBA or accepting a smaller role was the only way to keep their careers alive. Could Russ take a prove-it deal in the NBA? Yeah, he could. Would it feel fair? Probably not. But sometimes life doesn't care about being fair. Now let's talk strategy. If Russ wants the next chapter to be one he controls, he needs the right setup. Not just a team that needs points, but a contender that actually values veteran leadership. He'd need a defensive core that can cover his weaknesses while he brings the energy, the chaos, and the electricity that only he can. And the PR side? He'd have to own it. I'm talking public workouts, media appearances, and social media moments, all showing that he's still the same relentless Russ, but smart, focused, and ready to fit in. Play it right. And the same league that sidelined him could end up proving just how much they misjudged him. Redemption isn't just possible, it's on the table. And if he pulls it off, nobody's going to forget it. So here's my question for you. What would you do if you were in Russ's shoes? Take the easy path or fight like a man who's never known anything but intensity? Because trust me, he's not done yet, and the next chapter could be the wildest one of all. If you want to see how this story unfolds, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You do not want to miss a single moment of Russ's journey, because whether you love him or hate him, you've never seen anything quite like this in the NBA.